tell you about whether you're, writing something, you're on the radio, you're doing broadcasts, whatever like that. Hear it in your head before it comes out of your mouth.
Yeah. We
Because
had a
this
couple.
stuff happens
We
so
had a
fast.
couple comments here. Chamarita Regis writes in, hope someone can answer. Do you need to have both shots before arriving to the island? Asking for someone heading here from Washington. Chamarita Regis, doesn't matter. Hate to say it, but if you're fully vaccinated at this point, you're still going into the quarantine facility. Unless they're a critical service worker, then they need something from their supervisor, a letter saying that they're a critical service worker. And there's also other exemptions that you can apply for on DPHS. It's the public health website, and then add a little / quarantine. And you go on there, and there's paperwork you can fill out for an exemption. But as of now, fully vaccinated, half vaccinated, non vaccinated at all, you're still going into quarantine. Well, it's not bad though. You get, there's a lot of perks. They give you about like 10 bottles of water a day. Get a free newspaper, all that. You can catch the link. They got Wi-Fi in the room. 714. Senator Jim Moylan joins us now. Good morning, Senator.
Morning, Chris. Morning, Jason.
Morning, Senator.
Thanks for coming on. Hi, how are you?
It's a bright Friday, so doing good. And this morning at 10 o'clock, we will be back in session for the State of the Judiciary address. So looking forward to hearing what they have to say.
Yeah, what is the state of the judiciary anyway? I have no idea. Other than,
yeah, they're going to tell us their goals and objectives and what they have been doing. And I bet as long as they're in front of the legislature, they're going to hint what additional monies they'll be needing to support their efforts. So I'll be listening and see what they have to say.
Senator, we had a comment here about the CCU water hike. They're raising utilities and they can't clean the island's illegal dumping sites. What a political joke that is. They saw the money spilling out of the bucket and utilities wants to catch some of that spill. Just what are your thoughts right out the bat? People have gone facing what could very well be a 30% increase in water rates over the next few years. Good, bad?
Right. Well, they're going to need to raise the funds. That's understood. Timing is always important, and of course, this isn't a good time. But they looked at it, and what they're using that money's for is a lot of patching up a lot of the leaks, so they can eventually save us cost. I think they're 50% or 60% of the water they produce is leaked out. So that needs to be repaired so we can reduce that cost. What they've done before, when they were able to bring down costs with the fill cost, they applied that discount back to the people. So I think, just as well as they looked at increasing, eventually, if they can look at decreasing, they would do the same. They're not in it to make any profit. They're just in it to provide the services that we need. I wouldn't wish it happened at this time, but they got to do it because they also have the responsibilities, knowing that many people aren't able to pay their current bills. At the end, we still had to make that debt, and we still had to make that payment. So I'm sure they waited to the final time when to do this and figured out this is the only time they can. So it's unfortunate, but I think with the repairs that they'll be making and the investments that they'll be making in the long run, it will benefit us all.
Oh, I thought you were going to get mad and be like, no increases, not now, not ever. Give it a few years.
Yeah, I remember those days, and that those senators did get reelected, but that's also where the situation we are in now. And I'd rather not see that. So we're looking at the future projection here. We're going to feel it in our pocketbooks, but hope they can get these corrections made quickly with that additional funding, so they can eventually reduce some costs later for us when it's appropriate.
Let's talk about this. Oh, wait, we had a comment here. Good morning, Senator Moylan. What's the status on the RISE Act local stimulus? What is going on with the RISE Act? Because, I mean, every time we have Daphne from Rev and Tax on, I ask her, hey, what's the status with the RISE Act? Because people are asking us. And last time I asked her, which was just the other day, she said I have no update on it, but when I do, I'll let you know. So it's kind of like she's like, God, quit asking me about the. I mean, in her own nice way, she's the nicest lady, but she's like, God, quit asking me about that. I'll tell you what, I'll tell you when I have an update. Because right now there's
Sure.
no update, and I think the issue was the governor was mad because the government and Guam employees weren't going to get any Rise Act money.
Right. The RISE Act was lapsed into law in the 35th, and supposed to give 800, I believe, to individuals, 1,600 to families when federal funds are available and as a priority. And then if not available, then government funds at that point. But now we know, and we've written, of course, a couple of letters to the governor, and I was able to get a response most likely through social media and your programs, but not directly. But the governor has expressed that first, the attempt to deny the RISE Act was the Biden's American Recovery Plan there, and the payment of the stimulus of the $1,400, saying that would trump the RISE Act, which has nothing to do with the RISE Act. That's a separate amount. That's a separate check. So that kind of reasoning died. And then the second attempt was, well, it's discriminatory because it didn't pay everyone. And the governor asked the AG for an opinion. The AG said, yeah, go right ahead. You can. Not all laws apply to everyone, but as long as it's for the good of the majority, that's you can go ahead and do so. That's the last I heard of where the RISE Act is. And I have been pleading with the administration to say we're having over $600 million coming in an American Recovery Plan. You know, the funding will be available. The governor has already verbally stated money for GVB, money for mayors, money for the hospital, others as well. But not for something that the governor has allowed to lapse into law and the people have been asking for. The best way we can help our economy is by putting as much as possible of this $600+ million back into the hands of the people so we can circulate it within the island. That would generate the needed general fund through BBT and employee taxes there. To support our government, to provide our services. So like Daphne, I haven't heard an update since then, but as long as we continue to voice our concern to raise up the RISE Act once again, the governor will have to say just yes or no. So we can move on with this. That's what I'd like to hear.
Senator, someone in the media did ask her in the last press conference, I believe, for an update on the RISE Act, and I think that she had said in so many words that she was still concerned about, like, not everyone's getting the money, which is so interesting to me because this was like wasn't this like a Democrat thing?
Yeah, yes, it was. I believe former Senator Regine Bisco Lee, that she introduced that in the 35th Guam legislature, and it passed, and then the governor just basically let it lapse into law. But it's law. And we need to do something about it. And we have the money forthcoming. And I'm hoping that I was thinking the money was already here, but I'm not getting any confirmation about that. It should be here shortly, and we should pay out the people of Guam with the RISE Act.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting.
I also have a bill to double that payment as well. We're close to double it. The bill increases the amount too.
I was thinking it was interesting that we haven't seen, because I mean, if that was my bill and it was my baby, like it was for former Senator Regine, I would think that you would hear something from her and be like, "Hey, yeah, that's my baby. Let's pay it out," or people need it, or. But I haven't heard anything. Yeah, so that was it's pretty interesting, Senator. You also had a bill here. That would kind of, like, correct me if I'm wrong. Does it widen the legal definition of what constitutes official misconduct for public employees?
Yeah, it further defines it.
Okay.
And that's our what we're seeing is that in the media recently we got these things with public officials, former directors, funding questions, right? Misuse of money, misuse of appropriation, influencing people to do certain biddings, So we looked at toughening the law, and basically from all these calls from our constituents and the perception of right now, I believe, about our government is that it's public corruption just is there, and it's being done by public servants in the performance of what they're supposed to be doing for the people of Guam. We shouldn't water down any of these issues, right? We see plea deals being made. We see people getting off with a slap of the wrist, or they basically resign. But there's big problems with what they did with the public corruptions going on. So what we did was make some mandatory fines from $10,000 to $50,000 of mandatory community service. We also added peace officers to the list, because the current law has in place specifically for building inspectors taking some bribery offenses, but also peace officers.
Why, Senator, did you hear about like building inspectors taking bribes or something?
The original law had that specifically mentioned in the original law. So those cases back then, I don't recall, but I think there was some former or recent issues, maybe back in 2019 in the building permit section, where somebody is no longer there either.
Oh, that's right.
That affected a lot, especially in the building permitting section, where we have billions of dollars just sitting there. And if you got to do a brown paper bag because to influence somebody to move your thing up higher on the list, that's uncalled for, when we could really help our island by getting these things approved and stamped and getting these buildings done and getting jobs established. So we further clarified in the bill also what official misconduct is. So we stiffened the penalties for the crimes. We added mandatory things, even community service. You got to do things back for the public. And sometimes, I remember my mom would tell me after the war and stuff, when people were still getting arrested, and you go down the street and you pick up trash and you're wearing a black and white suit just for like some public humiliation, or just to tell the public, hey, I did wrong, and I gotta do the right thing next time. So the message is, we're not tolerating this anymore. We had to have stiffer penalties to hope to. The idea is to deter it.
Who's not tolerating it? Because you and I might not tolerate it, but it actually seems encouraged in this administration. Let me ask you this, okay? Yeah. Riddle me this, Senator Jim. If your bill were to become law today, and I was like, let's say, randomly, let's say I was like a director of an agency like Guam Customs, and I, shoved an employee, a female employee, while I was on the job, what type of penalty would I receive under your law, your bill, should it become, if it was law?
Yeah, well, that's more of a bodily harm to another person. So there wasn't necessarily a contract involved or influence the others.
But it's still like an official who's on the clock, right? And that's misconduct.
Right. But if they plead down to a misdemeanor, then we're making that misdemeanor, we increase that, the penalty for that. So it gave them a greater penalty. What I'm specifically looking at, my concern is this over $600 million coming on in. And the OPA has mentioned that I need help in reviewing and auditing this. And we saw in that recent report of the sole source and the emergency procurement contracts that were out there. And we're only getting that report once a year. Next month, by the way, I'll have my bill on so we can make it a monthly report. That we can look at it quicker. But if we do find research into that, and we do find errors in that, and we can see where tampering has gone on, then that's when this bill will come in and make it stiffer penalties. We don't want people's hands in the cookie jar that are thinking they can get away with it. So if we implement something strong, then hopefully it can deter and change their minds about doing the bad thing. That's where this bill will come in most handy.
But if your bill doesn't pass, then these people who are convicted of official misconduct can go work at the port.
Right. Yeah.
Let's switch gears here, Senator. So this was so interesting. I had Senator Tello, Senator Chris on yesterday. They have a local war claims commission bill. And so do you and Vice Speaker Tina Munia Barnes. Now, it's so interesting to me because this tracking the timeline, I know that Senator Tellos was introduced first, but, first isn't always best. I'm just going to say devil's advocate wise. But I had made the joke with her that if Vice Speaker Tina was coming out with a bill that was the same as hers, that I'm pretty sure the governor would give preference to Vice Speaker Tina's bill because it's Vice Speaker Tina, and that's her kind of one of her go-tos in the legislature. But then I kind of thought, oh, maybe if Senator Moylan's on it, maybe the governor might be like, oh, no, I don't know, I don't want to. But they actually came out with a release yesterday morning and said, the governor's office said that they favor you and the vice speaker's bill. So I guess my first question is, when did you become the governor's pet?
Oh, yeah, I think I'm far from that. Yeah, the gate may be closed when I try to visit, but I'm sure I just have to knock a few times and then I'll be allowed in with escort. Yeah. But I was happy to work with the vice speaker on the bill 130. And it's been months past that I've been talking with the vice speaker about this, because I've too have been approached on opening up the war claims again. In fact, my uncle received his check, and he has a brother in the mainland that never applied because it wasn't aware of it. And now more people are aware because they see their family getting checks and raising their hand. Hey, what about me? So I did call the Congressman Mike San Nicolas office about this as well months back too, and asking him how we can proceed. And he said, if you're going to try to get the Congress to act again, sure, we can attempt, but I tell you, it's going to be quite some time. And then he referenced back to his conversation he had with the Vice Speaker, Senator Barnes, to implement a local program as what we've seen previously done with that Hakobatan situation there. That's going back to my other bill. You're right. But we can do that. And
I'm sorry, I got to interject here, Senator, because you mentioned the Hakobatan thing, and just why we're laughing about this is because the owners of Hakobatan are also they were providing, I think, meal services for government of Guam. The auditor just came out with the audit and a ruling where he said that when the owners of the Hakobatan building allowed the administration to use the building as a war claims processing center, that constituted a favor that I guess any reasonable person would assume would affect any type of procurement. And so the public auditors barred this company from being able to participate in government bids. Am I correct in my assessment of those facts, Senator? Yeah. But then the AG just came out and said, oh, no, you don't have the authority to bar anything. But what I thought was so interesting was that the attorney for the company is Attorney Vanessa Williams, who we all know is very tight with the administration. So I don't know what's going on, if it's just like they're trying to protect their own people, because that's what it looks like. But I just think it's so weird that the AG would come out and say like, oh, public auditor, you don't have the authority to bar anyone from doing favors. Let them keep doing favors, because that's what it sounded like to me. Right?
Right.
Yeah. So that's a little backstory on that, and that's why we laughed at that, guys. I don't like doing inside jokes on the air. I mean, I know that you guys are the most informed audience, so you would already known, but just for the benefit of our audience that didn't know why that was funny, that's why that was funny. Okay, go ahead, Senator.
All right. So let's see. So I was speaking with the vice speaker about this as well. So that's when we came around with this bill number 130, to help expedite or actually reopen for those after June. Let's see, what date was this? June 2018, I believe it was. Yes. After June 2018, the vice speaker had been working on with folks since the last, I think it was since the 35th, and has collected over 700 signatures of people that are interested or would have qualified if they would have met the deadline. So that's why this bill was pursued. And glad the governor has acknowledged and wanting to work with us on this. And I think we can get others also interested. We just need to get the public hearing going and see what needs to be done. And, Senator Tillo also introduced her bills. And, there's other times when multiple bills have been introduced on the same subject matters, but as it works out, maybe the things can join in some fashion, or one gets across. But I'm glad we're at least opening it up for discussion once again and see how far it can go
We had a
in the
comment
process at Congress.
from Rosemary. Where would the funds come from with your bill?
Oh, okay. So currently, the National Defense Act of 2017 has the claims fund, and that's what's paying out the current war claims bill. And similar to what we did at last year, what the governor did with expediting the payments of at Hakubotan there, that building, was to advance that and then get to reimburse from this funds. So on the bill itself, it says we're establishing the war claims fund to expedite the adjudicated claims. And if we have to put into that fund here locally to get reimbursed, then that's what we can do. So there's already a fund established, and that's coming from Section 30 money. Anything above 64 million, I believe, goes into that fund. What's happening, though, I think you mentioned, is that to administer that fund, the federal government is charging us, I'm sure it's over around $1 million already coming out of that fund for their expenses. If we can handle that, then we'll be saving also, and then we'll be able to expedite it because we're in more control of that. So for the expense, if there's expense to do this, and the governor on this plan is the one that shall put it together. And it's important that the governor do this because it will be the governor's administration that will be implementing this. And the governor would have to know the best way to handle this, and she already has experience with the previous one. Now it's just this funding to be in more control of it. We would still need, of course, to get the assistance through Mike St. Nicholas' office, our congressman's office, in getting these names down and verifying the claimant's requests. So there will be a process. The funding source is available. That's federal law, U.S. law there, saying that it's coming from Section 30 money. Or percentage over the 64 million goes into the claims fund, which will be used as well.
Right on, Senator. Well, may the best bill win. I got to say, though, I remember last term it was like you couldn't get your bills on the floor, but it seems like this term the cozy relationship you have with the rules chair is starting to pay off a little bit for you.
Well, you build a kind of a relationship. Sure, you start off wondering, how we're going to work it together. And there was different groups in the 35th, right? We had a super majority, 10-5, 10 Democrats, 5 Republicans. Now that's, and 10 ladies and 5 guys. And now in the 36, it's an 8-7. So we're at a closer scale. And we can have a better relationship knowing that we each need each other's support to get the bill passed. So I guess I'm more I'm glad to see, and of course in the first session I got a bill passed there, and I think I got one in the next session as well. So I'm happy for that. I'm doing my job this time.
All right, Senator. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. You have a great weekend.
You too, Senator. Senator Jim Moylan there. 7:37. It's Friday, April 30th. Let's keep it in the KUAM News Zoom room where Dr. Ho Wen, the Physicians Advisory Group Chair, is standing by.